news coming in at this hour from Iran. Now, there seems to be protests that have erupted after the exiled prince's call in Iran. Now, in the latest that we're tracking, the US President Donald Trump has said that Iran is not doing well. The US President has further gone on to talk about Iran's protests and has gone on to say that we'll hit Iran if they kill rioters. This, of course, is an open statement that's been issued by the US President, an open threat that has been issued to the Iran establishment, where he's gone on to say that he will hit Iran if they kill rioters. Important information we're tracking. This comes as there seems to be nationwide anti-government turmoil that has spread in Iran. There are massive protests happening in Iran amid the economic crisis. Well, on this, we have my colleague Arjun joining us on the broadcast. Arjun, walk us through the details. There seems to be an open threat that's been issued by the US President Donald Trump.
That's the latest in a series of protests, in fact, that have been going on ever since the 28th of December. I'd like to point out here now the genesis of these protests, which are also being dubbed as the Grand Bazaar protests of Iran. It's literally bazaar versus barricades in the country since the 28th of December. Now, that's the day where $1 reached a worth of 1.45 million riyals. That's correct. So the riyal dipped. Merchants in Tehran shut down their shutters, and well, for the regime, we all know how it's been cracking down on protesters. It's nothing new. We've seen it happen so many times after the Islamic Revolution of 1979, the latest episode in 2022, the Masa Amini protests, and now we have the total economic collapse, with the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei even coming out after offering the protesters a relief of $7 per month, and then using his state machinery to crack down on the protesters. Now, through these days, we're also getting to learn that more than 36 protesters have in fact been killed. The protests have spread to 111 cities across Iran as we speak. And now the latest in the string is exiled Prince Pahlavi coming out and asking protesters, rather telling protesters, urging them to take to the streets. And now Donald Trump has stepped in, warning Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and the Iranian regime, which has been ruling with an ironclad grip for years now, to not harm or kill protesters. Back to you, Reed.
Right, absolutely, Arjun. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing those updates with us. Well, massive protests have erupted across Iran as anti-government protests have escalated. Now, it's important to understand that large anti-government demonstrations are currently taking place across all of Iran, including the capital city of Tehran. Now, it is the 12th night that protesters have taken to the streets, visuals present on your screens at the moment. Now, this, of course, is a wave of unrest sparked by the country's economic crisis. While Iran's state broadcaster IRIB's state building was set on fire by civilian protesters in Isfahan, this is the central Iran part. Visuals present on your screens at the moment, of course, smoke present there billowing from, of course, the building. Now, there were also chants of deaths to the dictators that have been heard in Iran, and the country's state broadcasting building went up in flames. Visuals present there on your screens. Well, apart from this, there were also pro-monarchy slogans chanted in the capital city of Tehran. Now, long live Shah were the chants that rang through the streets of Tehran as the exiled crowned prince gave repeated calls for the protesters to take to the streets. Well, a video showed protesters raising the Lion in the Sun, the flag of Iran, at a major square in the city to loud cheers from protesters. The protesters were chanting "Long live the King" in Persian, a nod to the pre-1979 monarchy. While the flag featuring the Lion and the Sun emblem was the official flag of Iran before the 1979 Islamic Revolution. While Iranian protesters have stepped up their challenge to the clerical leadership with the biggest protest yet of nearly 2 decades of rallies as authorities have cut internet access and the death toll from a crackdown has mounted. While videos and images show, in fact, massive anti-government protests across multiple cities in Iran. This comes as protesters took to the streets in large numbers. At least 34 protesters and 4 security personnel have been killed during the unrest, and about 2,200 protesters have been arrested. Now, this information comes from a US-based human rights activist news agency that has reported this. While the movement, which originated from a shutdown on Tehran Bazaar on the 28th of December after the real currency plunged to record lows, has spread nationwide and is now being marked by larger-scale demonstrations, including in the capital city of Tehran. While the exiled Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, has in fact called the protesters his courageous compatriots, urging them to take to the streets. He's further gone on to say that Iran is facing a historic moment and has added that he is ready to return to Iran. Now, amid the protests, the US President Donald Trump has reacted, saying that if the rioters are killed, the US will strike Iran.
قطعا توجه کردید که ازدحام جمعیت باعث این میشه که نیروها پس بروند و امکان ریزش رو به سمت شما بیشتر میکنن. بنابراین مهم استش که این انضباط و گستردگی رو حفظ بکنیم. من اولین فراخوان خود را امروز با شما در میان میگذارم و از شما دعوت میکنم که این جمعه و پنجشنبه 18 و 19 دی ماه را سر ساعت 8 شب همگی چه در خیابان‌ها یا حتی از منازل خودتون شروع به شعار سر دادن بکنید. در نتیجه بازخورد این حرکت‌ها من فراخوان‌های بعدی رو به شما اعلام خواهم کرد.
We certainly stand by anybody who's engaged in peaceful protest, anybody who's trying to exert their rights for free association and to have their voices heard. Obviously, the Iranian regime has a lot of problems, and as the President of the United States has said, the smartest thing for them to have done, it was true 2 months ago, it's true today, is for them to actually have a real negotiation with the United States about what we need to see when it comes to their nuclear program. I'll let the President speak to what we're going to do in the future, but we certainly stand with anybody across the world, including the Iranian people, who are advocating for their rights.
A call by Iran's exiled crown prince has seen thousands enter the streets of Iran's capital to protest against the government. The call by Reza Pahlavi had been kind of a question mark, especially as days of protests have been escalating in Iran over the country's ailing economy. Those protests had taken on an anti-government view over the last several days as they've intensified. Now, Reza Pahlavi had called for demonstrators to shout from their homes or to go out on the streets to show their support for a change of government there. And what witnesses in Tehran saw were thousands of people on the street, as well as people chanting "Death to the Islamic Republic," "Death to the dictator," and other chants in support of the Shah. Now, it remains unclear just how much support Pahlavi actually has. There's a lot of demonstrators who are very young and don't remember what life was like under the Shah prior to the 1979 Islamic Revolution. And also, it remains unclear just how much support he'll have because of the support he's received and the support he's given to Israel, which launched a 12-day war against Iran in June that killed over 1,000 Iranians. So as of right now, there's still a lot of question marks, but one thing is for certain, these demonstrations in Iran seem to be gathering strength. And while the Iranian government is apparently starting to disrupt the internet there, they haven't cracked down all the way on these demonstrations, allowing them to continue. But after these demonstrations tonight, it's unclear just how they'll respond, particularly as Pahlavi has called for another set of demonstrations.
Well, on this, we have Mr. Intifat Kanbar joining us. He's a Middle East expert, in fact, a Middle East expert. Sir, I wish to understand from you, firstly, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. You know, there seems to be major protests that have gripped Iran at the moment. How exactly do you view the US President Donald Trump's statement coming amid this, where he's openly issued a threat to Iran, saying that if the rioters are killed or are harmed, then the US will strike Iran?
Well, I joined President Trump's campaign in 2024, and I have met with many of the friends' closest circle in person, and the motto was peace with strength. Trump believes that peace cannot happen without strength, and Iran has been wreaking havoc and mayhem in the Middle East. Iran has been the biggest terror sponsor state, not only in the world, in the history of mankind. And I think the toppling of this heinous regime who is oppressing their own people for 47 years. Look at your country, India. It's a great country which has the biggest democracy in the world. We're all proud of it. Why can't the Iranians have democracy and freedom to choose their leaders? Why an ailing 90 years old Ayatollah imposing his backwarded idea on one of the most advanced and civilized people in the Middle East and the world, the Iranian people? I think the Iranians deserve their freedom. And I think President Trump has made the right move. The thing started, by the way, when President Trump killed Qasem Soleimani, the biggest terrorist in history, who was killed 6 years ago. Since then, the Iranian regime deterioration continued. But after October 7th and the 12 days war, the Iranian regime lost a lot of their strategic depth. They lost Hezbollah, they lost Hamas, they lost the Houthis, and now they lost one of their most strongest and important allies, Venezuela. So the grand strategy for President Trump is not only to topple the regime of Tehran, is to help the Iranian people to topple their own regime and to establish peace and prosperity in the Middle East and the world when this regime, God willing, will go away.
Very important, and you've rightly mentioned that Iran does deserve a democracy, but the question of course at hand is the fact that does the Reza, the crown prince who's been in exile, does he have that amount of support on ground in Tehran?
Well, I tell you one thing, the difficult and the uphill work has not started yet. Iran and His Excellency the Shah will find out that Iran is no longer what it used to be. It's divided, it's fragmented. There has to be new ideas for a new constitution. I would advise for federalism. Many experts here in Washington are fearful that if Khamenei falls down, Iran will be fragmented to several countries. I wish the Iranians could live together. Arabs, Persians, Baluch, Azaris in one country, but I don't think a central rule of Iran will work anymore. But I would leave this to the Iranian people to decide. I'm here to advise and to stand by them and stand by the people of Iran.
Well, so there's also this argument that, of course, the 1979 Islamic Revolution was something that may not be present within the conscience of the people, given the fact that many of them were not around the time when it happened. Do you perhaps think that that could be one of the factors, that could be one of the driving nostalgic factors, something that could be a ray of hope for, of course, the Reza, who could come in and usher perhaps a better way of life for them?
Well, even if the young generation have lived through the days of the Shah, freedom, you don't have to be taught to be free. Freedom, we are born with freedom. They have seen movies, they have seen documentaries, they have heard from their grandfathers and mothers and fathers how much better was the situation in Iran. Iran is a very, very rich country. Why the Iranian people has no food to eat? Why the Iranian people have their currency worth less than a piece of paper? All because the regime of Iran and Khamenei is paying these monies for terrorism to Hezbollah, against Israel, against the Arabs, they have destroyed at least 5 countries in the Middle East. All these taken from the money which is owned by the Iranian people, which could go back to the Iranian people. And I support and I pray to God the Iranian people will prevail and win this war. And I support President Trump's call for punishing whoever killing those innocent demonstrators.
Right, absolutely, Conrad. Thank you so much for speaking to us, for speaking to NDTV. It was a pleasure speaking to you.